It was a quiet Tuesday morning when the CEO of a rising tech company decided to make a quick stop at the local branch of his bank. He had been running a busy schedule, attending meetings, and reviewing company reports late into the night. Despite his hectic life, he always made it a point to manage his personal and business finances himself, believing in staying grounded and aware of every detail. That morning he wanted to deposit a sizable check and withdraw some cash for personal expenses. The bank was not very crowded, just a few customers scattered around, each waiting quietly in line. The CEO walked in confidently, but without any arrogance. His presence was calm, professional, and unassuming, wearing a crisp suit, glasses slightly slipping down his nose, and carrying a leather briefcase filled with documents. He greeted the security guard and the receptionist with a polite nod and a smile, expecting the usual routine transaction. He approached the teller, a young woman who seemed distracted scrolling on her phone even as customers stood nearby. The CEO placed his check on the counter and politely asked to deposit it, mentioning that he would also need some cash from his account. He expected a simple, courteous response, but what happened next was completely unexpected. Instead of handling the transaction carefully, the teller seemed to fumble, barely paying attention. She counted the cash quickly and then almost carelessly threw the bills onto the counter. Some of the money slid to the floor. The CEO froze for a moment, taken aback by the disrespectful behavior. He looked at the teller, hoping she would realize her mistake and apologize, but she continued typing on her computer, not acknowledging the incident. Nearby customers began to notice the scene. A woman waiting with her child gave a small gasp, and an older man shifted uncomfortably, glancing at the CEO with a mixture of concern and disbelief. The CEO remained calm, though his heart raced. He bent down, picked up the scattered bills and laid them neatly back on the counter. He maintained a polite tone and said, "Excuse me, could you please handle this carefully?" The teller muttered a barely audible "okay," but did not look up. Her body language was dismissive, and it was clear that the interaction had affected the CEO deeply. He had been in countless professional meetings, faced challenges, and handled crises with composure, but being treated with such disregard in a simple banking transaction struck a nerve. He felt a mix of humiliation, frustration, and disbelief. As the transaction continued, he realized that the issue was not about the money. It was about respect and dignity. Every person deserves to be treated with basic courtesy, and here he was a man who had built a successful business through hard work being treated as if he didn't matter. The incident was not just rude, it was demeaning, and the lack of acknowledgement from the teller made it worse. Once the transaction was complete, the CEO calmly thanked the teller and left the counter. On his way out, he noticed the reactions of the other customers again. Some had been quietly observing, while others seemed disturbed by the way the teller handled the cash. He realized that this moment, though small, had an impact beyond himself. It was a reflection of broader societal issues, subtle but powerful, that many people faced every day. Walking out of the bank, he paused for a moment outside, taking a deep breath. The morning air was crisp, and the city around him continued in its usual rhythm. He tried to shake off the feeling of humiliation, but it lingered. He replayed the scene in his mind, thinking about how he could respond appropriately without letting anger control him. He knew that this was not just about one rude teller. It was an opportunity to address a larger problem, one that affected countless individuals who might not have his platform or influence. He pulled out his phone and began taking notes. Every detail mattered. The teller's actions, her body language, the time of the incident, the reactions of other customers. He wanted to document the event factually without exaggeration, so that if he chose to escalate it, he had an accurate account. As he wrote, he reflected on the importance of staying composed in the face of disrespect. He didn't want to let this moment define him negatively, but he also didn't want to ignore it. As he walked to his car, he began to think about how often similar situations occurred in daily life. Quietly, without acknowledgement. People were disrespected for reasons they couldn't control: their race, their gender, their appearance, or their social status. He thought about the power dynamics in society, and how small actions like tossing cash on the floor could reinforce harmful messages. Despite feeling upset, he reminded himself of the principles that had guided his life and career: integrity, professionalism, and the courage to stand up for what was right. This incident, though humiliating, was an opportunity to address an injustice thoughtfully and effectively. He made a mental note to remain calm, gather evidence, and plan his next steps carefully. The CEO arrived at his office, but the incident lingered in his mind. He shared the experience with a close colleague, describing the teller's behavior and his own reactions. His colleague listened, expressing shock and concern, and encouraged him to take measured action. They discussed possible ways to report the incident, considering both formal complaints and raising awareness through social media and professional networks. As the day went on, the CEO couldn't ignore the lingering emotions. He felt a mix of anger, sadness, and determination. Anger at being treated disrespectfully, sadness at the reminder that discrimination and disregard still existed in subtle forms, and determination to turn the incident into a constructive outcome. He wanted to ensure that no one else would have to endure the same experience silently. Later in the evening, he reflected on his own privilege and responsibility. He had the resources, influence, and platform to address the situation, unlike many who faced similar disrespect without any recourse. This realization fueled his resolve to act thoughtfully and purposefully. He didn't want his response to be reactive or fueled by emotion. He wanted it to be strategic and impactful. That night, he drafted a detailed account of the incident, carefully noting facts and avoiding assumptions or exaggerated language. He included the time, location, the teller's actions, and the reactions of nearby customers. He also reflected on his personal feelings, ensuring that his account was honest yet professional. He knew that this documentation would be important if he chose to escalate the matter or share his experience publicly. As he finished writing, he felt a sense of clarity. The incident at the bank had shaken him, but it also reminded him of his values and the importance of standing up for dignity and respect. He resolved to approach the situation with composure, focusing on accountability and constructive change rather than revenge or anger. Before going to bed, he shared a brief note with a close friend, explaining the incident and his intention to address it thoughtfully. His friend responded with support and encouragement, reminding him that speaking up could create awareness and positive change. The CEO went to sleep that night with a mix of lingering frustration and renewed determination, knowing that the next steps he took would matter not just for himself, but for others who might face similar disrespect in the future. The incident, small in appearance but significant in impact, had marked a turning point in his week. It was a moment that would shape his actions, reflections, and decisions in the days to come. He understood that true leadership was not only about managing a business, but also about confronting injustice, advocating for respect, and setting an example for others to follow. The next day, he planned to consider carefully how to respond, ensuring that his actions were fair, measured, and powerful in highlighting the importance of dignity and respect in every interaction. The morning after the incident at the bank, the CEO woke up with a sense of determination. His mind was still heavy with thoughts about the disrespect he had faced, but he knew he could not allow anger to cloud his judgment. Today was about taking measured action, gathering evidence, and thinking through the best way to respond. He began the day by reviewing his notes from the previous evening. Every detail mattered. He had written down the teller's name, the time, the branch location, and exactly what had happened. He remembered how she had thrown the money on the buy counter, the way she ignored him, and the subtle looks of discomfort from the other customers nearby. He wanted to ensure that every fact was clearly recorded, because he knew that accuracy was crucial if he planned to address the situation formally. The CEO then made a list of possible steps. He could call the branch manager directly, submit a formal complaint to the bank's customer service department, or share his experience on social media to alert the public. Each option had potential benefits and risks, and he weighed them carefully. Calling the branch might lead to a swift internal response, but it could be ignored. A social media post could create awareness and accountability, but it could also escalate quickly and draw intense public scrutiny. He wanted to act in a way that was effective, fair, and responsible. As he sat at his desk, he thought about similar incidents he had witnessed or heard about in the past. Many people faced subtle forms of disrespect daily, and often these encounters went unreported because they seemed minor or because people felt powerless. The more he reflected on this, the more he understood that his experience was not just personal, it was part of a larger pattern. This realization gave him a sense of purpose beyond his own feelings of humiliation. He wanted to use his experience to help raise awareness and encourage change. After reviewing his notes, he decided to start with a measured approach. He called the bank's corporate customer service line, explaining the incident calmly and clearly. He described what had happened, emphasizing the disrespectful treatment and the careless handling of cash. He asked for the matter to be investigated, for the teller to be held accountable, and for the bank to implement measures to prevent such incidents in the future. The representative on the other end listened politely and assured him that the complaint would be escalated. The CEO made a note of the reference number and the name of the person he spoke to, keeping track of everything carefully. While he appreciated the response, he felt it was only the first step. He knew that real accountability might require more than a simple complaint. Later in the day, he met with a close colleague over lunch to discuss the incident further. He shared the details again, speaking honestly about how it made him feel and why he believed it was important to take action. His colleague expressed shock and empathy, emphasizing that what had happened was unacceptable. Together, they brainstormed ways to ensure the issue would be addressed effectively. They considered the potential impact of sharing the story publicly. Social media, professional networks, and news outlets could amplify the message, but it needed to be done carefully. The CEO wanted to avoid sensationalism or anger-driven posts. Instead, he focused on a factual, calm, and professional account of the incident. He knew that maintaining his credibility and composure would be key to drawing constructive attention rather than controversy. As the afternoon passed, the CEO reflected on his own emotions. He realized that part of his reaction was frustration at being powerless in that moment, and part of it was sadness at the broader implications of such behavior. The teller's actions were not just rude, they were a reflection of deeper societal issues, including bias and lack of awareness. He wanted to address the incident in a way that highlighted these larger concerns, helping others recognize the importance of respect and dignity in everyday interactions. By the evening, he began drafting a careful statement. He described the incident factually, noting the teller's actions, his own response, and the reactions of other customers. He also included his thoughts on why such behavior was harmful and how it could affect others, particularly in the context of subtle discrimination that often goes unnoticed. He wrote in a clear, concise, and professional tone, avoiding any language that could be seen as inflammatory. After completing the draft, he reviewed it several times, refining the wording to ensure clarity and impact. He wanted the statement to convey the seriousness of the incident while remaining respectful and professional. His goal was not to attack the individual teller personally, but to highlight the need for accountability, awareness, and change within the institution. The next morning, the CEO took a step that felt significant. He posted a carefully written account of the incident on his professional network. He shared his experience, emphasizing the importance of respect, professionalism, and awareness in customer service. He encouraged others to reflect on similar experiences and to support efforts that promote dignity and fairness in everyday interactions. Almost immediately, the response was noticeable. Colleagues, friends, and community members commented with support, sharing their own experiences and expressing outrage at the disrespectful behavior. The post began to gain traction, being shared widely across social media platforms. People praised the CEO for speaking up and addressing the issue in a calm, thoughtful manner. Some even contacted the bank directly, adding their voices to the growing call for accountability. Throughout the day, the CEO monitored the response. While he was pleased by the support, he remained focused on the core issue, ensuring that the bank took meaningful action. He received messages from people who had faced similar incidents and felt empowered by his courage to speak up. He realized that his story resonated not only because of the incident itself, but because it highlighted a universal need for respect and fairness. The bank, noticing the growing attention, reached out to him directly. A senior representative expressed regret over the incident, and assured him that a formal investigation would be conducted. They requested a meeting to discuss the situation and potential steps to address it. The CEO agreed, seeing this as an opportunity to advocate for change and hold the institution accountable. As he prepared for the meeting, the CEO reflected on what he hoped to achieve. He wanted the teller's actions to be addressed, but more importantly, he wanted the bank to implement measures to prevent similar incidents in the future. Training, awareness programs, and clear accountability were essential to creating an environment where every customer could be treated with dignity and respect. He also thought about the larger community impact. By sharing his experience publicly, he had sparked a conversation about respect, bias, and customer service standards. People were talking, sharing, and reflecting on their own experiences. The incident, though deeply personal, had opened the door for a broader dialogue that could lead to meaningful change. That evening, the CEO reviewed his notes again and prepared a list of key points for the upcoming meeting. He wanted to remain calm, professional, and persuasive, focusing on solutions rather than personal grievances. He reminded himself that this was an opportunity to turn a negative experience into a positive impact, both for himself and for others who might face similar disrespect in the future. Before going to bed, he reflected on the journey so far. From the moment the teller threw cash on the floor to the growing support on social media, he realized that his response had the power to influence change. He felt a mix of pride, determination, and responsibility. Pride in maintaining his composure, determination to pursue accountability, and responsibility to use his platform for good. He knew the days ahead would involve careful navigation of corporate procedures, public attention, and personal reflection. But he felt ready. The incident had shaken him, but it had also clarified his values and purpose. Standing up for dignity, advocating for respect, and fostering awareness had become his mission, and he was prepared to pursue it thoughtfully, strategically, and with unwavering integrity. The day the CEO decided to go public with his story, he felt a mix of nervousness and determination. Sharing personal experiences, especially ones involving discrimination or disrespect, was never easy. Yet he knew that by telling the truth, he could not only hold the bank accountable, but also shine a light on a larger issue that many people silently faced every day. He began by carefully reviewing the statement he had drafted the night before. It was concise, factual, and professional. He made sure every detail was accurate: the time, the branch location, the teller's actions, and the reactions of other customers who had witnessed the incident. He also included his reflections on why this matter went beyond a simple transaction. It was about respect, dignity, and fairness in every interaction. Once he felt confident with the statement, he posted it on his professional network and social media accounts. He avoided sensational words or emotional outbursts, instead focusing on presenting the incident clearly and calmly. He shared what had happened, how it made him feel, and why he believed it was important to address. He emphasized the need for accountability and the hope that his story could spark awareness and positive change. Within minutes, notifications began to appear on his phone. Messages of support poured in from colleagues, friends, and acquaintances. Many shared similar experiences, expressing solidarity and gratitude that he was speaking up. Some people admitted they had faced disrespect or subtle discrimination in everyday situations and had never felt empowered to share their stories. The CEO realized that by taking this step, he had given a voice to many others who had remained silent. As the post continued to gain traction, he noticed that local news outlets and journalists had started to reach out. They wanted to cover the story not as a personal attack, but to discuss broader issues of customer treatment, racial bias, and corporate responsibility. The CEO agreed to a few interviews, but he remained careful to stick to the facts and maintain a professional tone. He did not want the story to become sensationalized or to distract from the real issues at hand. He also observed the responses from the community. Supportive comments poured in, but some were critical or questioning. A few asked whether he had overreacted or whether he might have misinterpreted the teller's behavior. The CEO welcomed these discussions, understanding that open dialogue was necessary. He calmly replied, explaining that respect is not optional and that every customer deserves fair treatment, regardless of background or status. Meanwhile, the bank began to feel the pressure. Their corporate office was aware that the CEO's post had gone viral, attracting attention from both the public and the media. Emails and calls started coming in from concerned citizens, stakeholders, and journalists. The bank quickly realized that the situation could not be handled quietly or superficially. They needed a thoughtful response, one that addressed both the specific incident and the broader concerns raised by the community. In response, the bank issued an official statement. They apologized for the incident and assured the public that they were conducting a thorough investigation. They highlighted their commitment to customer service and their plan to review training and policies to prevent similar events in the future. While the statement was formal and polite, it was clear to the CEO and many supporters that a deeper action would be required to restore trust. As the story unfolded, the CEO received messages from people he had never met. Small business owners, employees, and everyday citizens reached out, sharing stories of how they had been treated unfairly in banks, stores, and public services. Some described subtle microaggressions, while others recounted blatant acts of disrespect. The CEO read each message carefully, feeling both sorrow for their experiences and a stronger sense of responsibility to continue advocating for change. The growing public attention also brought personal reflection. The CEO thought about his own reactions to the incident and how he had maintained composure despite humiliation. He realized that keeping calm had been a choice, one that allowed him to respond effectively rather than impulsively. He understood that this approach not only strengthened his credibility, but also inspired others to act with dignity in the face of disrespect. Within a week, the story gained national attention. Media outlets ran pieces focusing not only on the specific incident, but also on larger patterns of disrespect and bias in customer service. Experts in social behavior and corporate ethics were invited to comment, discussing the importance of sensitivity, professionalism, and accountability. The CEO's story became a catalyst for broader conversations about workplace training, institutional bias, and the role of individuals in advocating for fair treatment. Amid this attention, the CEO prepared for a meeting with the bank's senior management. He wanted to ensure that the discussion would lead to meaningful action, not just public relations statements. He compiled notes on the incident, responses from supporters, and examples of similar situations reported by others. His goal was to show that the issue was systemic and deserved careful attention and corrective measures. On the day of the meeting, he entered the bank's corporate office with a composed, professional demeanor. The executives greeted him politely, acknowledging the viral attention his story had received. The CEO presented his account, emphasizing both the specific incident and its broader implications. He spoke about the importance of accountability, proper training, and fostering a culture of respect that would prevent future incidents. The executives listened carefully. They asked questions, seeking clarity about the incident and the reactions it had sparked. The CEO responded thoughtfully, maintaining focus on solutions rather than dwelling on personal grievances. He highlighted practical steps the bank could take: sensitivity training for employees, clear policies on handling customers, and mechanisms to report and address disrespectful behavior promptly. After the meeting, the CEO felt a sense of cautious optimism. The bank had acknowledged the seriousness of the issue and appeared willing to make changes. He knew that progress would require follow-through, but the initial discussions were promising. He also recognized the importance of continued public attention, ensuring that the bank could not ignore the need for meaningful action. As the days passed, the CEO continued to engage with the community. He shared updates, responded to messages, and encouraged others to advocate for fair treatment in their own experiences. He emphasized that respect and dignity were universal values, not privileges reserved for certain individuals. His efforts helped maintain momentum, keeping the conversation alive and ensuring that the bank remained accountable. The CEO also reflected privately on the personal growth that had come from the incident. He had faced humiliation and frustration, but had transformed those feelings into purposeful action. He realized that leadership extended beyond business success. It included standing up for what was right, using influence responsibly, and inspiring others to act with courage and integrity. By the end of the third week, the story had firmly established itself as a symbol of advocacy, awareness, and accountability. The CEO's approach, calm, factual, and professional, demonstrated that addressing injustice effectively required both courage and strategy. The incident at the bank had become more than a personal experience. It had sparked meaningful dialogue, influenced public opinion, and begun the process of systemic change. Through it all, the CEO remained grounded. He continued his professional duties, engaged with supporters, and prepared for the next steps with the bank. While the incident had caused discomfort and frustration, it had also highlighted the power of measured, principled action. He understood that by maintaining focus, clarity, and dignity, he could not only seek justice for himself but also contribute to a broader movement for fairness and respect in society. The story of that day at the bank, once a moment of personal indignity, had evolved into a catalyst for change. It brought together community voices, media attention, and corporate accountability. The CEO had turned a negative experience into an opportunity for awareness, reflection, and action. And as he continued to navigate the public response and the bank's internal processes, he remained committed to the core values that had guided him throughout his career: integrity, respect, and the courage to speak up for what is right. After the CEO's story went public, the bank quickly realized that it could no longer treat the matter lightly. Corporate leadership convened an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. Emails, calls, and media inquiries had poured in, and the story had captured national attention. The executives knew that public perception was at stake, and more importantly, they recognized that this incident highlighted gaps in their training, employee behavior, and customer service standards. The bank's senior management decided to conduct a formal internal investigation. They wanted to determine exactly what had happened, why it had occurred, and how they could ensure it never happened again. They reviewed surveillance footage from the branch, spoke with the teller involved, and interviewed witnesses who had been present. The process was thorough, and the CEO's detailed notes and public account became a central part of their review. Meanwhile, the CEO continued to engage with supporters and followers, sharing updates about the investigation. He emphasized that while his experience had sparked attention, the focus should remain on accountability, meaningful change, and raising awareness about respect and customer service. He encouraged people to remain constructive, explaining that true progress came from measured actions rather than anger or retaliation. The teller involved in the incident was called in for questioning. She explained her side, citing distraction and a busy day as factors in her behavior. However, her explanation did not excuse the careless handling of the CEO's cash or the dismissive attitude she had shown. The investigation highlighted patterns of behavior that suggested gaps in training and awareness, reinforcing the need for systemic change. The bank's leadership also engaged human resources and compliance teams to assess whether additional training programs or policy adjustments were necessary. They realized that this incident was not isolated. Many employees were unaware of how subtle behaviors could be perceived as disrespectful or discriminatory, and this needed to be addressed to prevent future issues. As the investigation progressed, the CEO maintained a careful balance of public engagement and private communication with the bank. He scheduled meetings with senior executives to discuss the findings and recommend actionable steps. His approach was calm, professional, and solution-focused, ensuring that the dialogue remained productive and centered on positive outcomes rather than personal grievances. Public reactions continued to grow. Media outlets reported on the investigation, highlighting both the CEO's advocacy and the bank's response. Experts in corporate ethics, social behavior, and customer service were invited to comment, reinforcing the message that respect and accountability are essential in all customer interactions. The CEO's story became a case study in the importance of addressing microaggressions, implicit bias, and professional misconduct in real-world situations. During this period, the CEO also reflected on the impact of his story on the community. He received messages from people across the country who had faced similar experiences, many of whom were ENSP. To speak up for themselves or advocate for change. He realized that while the incident had been humiliating, it had also created a ripple effect, encouraging broader awareness and discussions about fairness, dignity, and professionalism. As the investigation neared completion, the bank prepared to announce its findings publicly. They planned to detail the actions taken, including corrective measures for the teller, updates to training programs, and steps to improve customer interactions. The CEO worked with the bank to ensure that the statement would be clear, factual, and focused on accountability rather than punitive spectacle. He emphasized the importance of demonstrating a genuine commitment to change. On the day of the announcement, the bank held a press briefing. Executives addressed the incident, acknowledged the CEO's concerns, and outlined the steps being taken to address employee behavior and customer service practices. They detailed mandatory sensitivity training for all staff, policy updates to prevent similar incidents, and mechanisms for customers to report mistreatment safely and effectively. The CEO attended the briefing, observing how the bank presented its commitment to accountability. While public perception was a factor, he also recognized that the tangible changes in training, policy, and oversight were significant. These actions signaled that the incident had prompted real reflection and reform within the institution. Following the announcement, the CEO continued to engage with his supporters, sharing his perspective on the bank's response. He acknowledged that progress had been made but emphasized that sustained accountability would require ongoing attention. He encouraged individuals to remain vigilant, to document incidents of disrespect or bias, and to advocate for fairness in their own experiences. The public response remained overwhelmingly supportive. People praised the CEO for his measured approach, highlighting his professionalism, clarity, and focus on solutions. The bank, for its part, recognized the importance of continued communication and follow-up to ensure that the changes implemented were effective and enduring. Throughout this process, the CEO continued to reflect on his personal growth. He had transformed an uncomfortable and humiliating experience into an opportunity for advocacy, leadership, and positive influence. The experience reinforced his belief in the importance of standing up for dignity, engaging thoughtfully with institutions, and using one's platform to foster awareness and change. By the end of the month, the incident had evolved into a story of accountability, reform, and public dialogue. The CEO's approach, calm, fact-based, and solution-oriented, had ensured that the focus remained on meaningful outcomes rather than personal retribution. The bank had taken steps to address employee behavior, enhance training, and strengthen policies, creating a safer and more respectful environment for all customers. In private moments, the CEO reflected on the journey so far. The initial shock, the public attention, the meetings, and the community engagement had all reinforced his understanding of leadership, responsibility, and the power of measured action. While the incident at the bank had been deeply uncomfortable, it had also offered a valuable opportunity to influence change and raise awareness about the importance of respect in every interaction. As he continued his daily life, the CEO remained vigilant. He monitored the bank's progress, engaged with the community, and encouraged ongoing dialogue about fairness and accountability. The incident had become a touchstone for broader conversations, illustrating how individuals can confront disrespect constructively and drive meaningful change. Through it all, he maintained his focus on integrity, professionalism, and the enduring principle that every person deserves respect, dignity, and fairness in every situation. The weeks following the bank's announcement marked a turning point in the story. The CEO observed closely how the changes unfolded within the institution. Employees underwent mandatory sensitivity training, and the bank updated its customer service policies to prevent future incidents. Regular checks were instituted to ensure compliance, and a clear reporting system was established for customers who experienced disrespect or unfair treatment. The teller who had thrown the cash on the floor faced consequences for her actions. She received formal reprimands and was required to attend intensive training on customer interaction and professional behavior. The bank made it clear that such conduct would not be tolerated, sending a strong message to all employees about the importance of respect and accountability. Publicly, the CEO continued to share updates with his followers and supporters. He highlighted the positive changes taking place within the bank, emphasizing that while one incident had triggered the conversation, the focus was now on improving systems and culture. People responded positively, appreciating his continued engagement and his dedication to fostering change, rather than simply seeking personal vindication. The CEO also reflected on the broader impact of his actions. By speaking up, he had encouraged a dialogue about respect, fairness, and the responsibilities of institutions toward their customers. He received messages from individuals across the country who had experienced similar incidents and now felt empowered to share their stories. Some described discrimination in small businesses, banks, and public services, while others recounted microaggressions that had gone unnoticed or unchallenged for years. The CEO realized that his willingness to address the incident publicly had created a ripple effect, inspiring others to seek accountability in their own lives. As the bank continued implementing reforms, the CEO met with senior managers to discuss progress. They reviewed the outcomes of the sensitivity training, assessed employee performance, and evaluated the effectiveness of new reporting mechanisms. The dialogue was constructive and focused on solutions rather than blame, reflecting the CEO's continued commitment to a professional and collaborative approach. Through these meetings, the CEO emphasized the importance of long-term change. He encouraged the bank to continue monitoring customer interactions, provide ongoing training, and maintain transparency with the public. He stressed that accountability was not a one-time event, but a continuous process that required vigilance, communication, and a willingness to address issues openly. Meanwhile, media coverage continued to highlight the positive steps taken by the bank and the CEO's role in advocating for change. Interviews, opinion pieces, and community discussions reinforced the message that respect and fairness are fundamental to every customer interaction. The CEO became a recognized voice for professional accountability, demonstrating how calm, factual, and solution-focused actions could drive meaningful outcomes. Beyond the immediate context, the CEO reflected on personal growth. The incident, which had initially been humiliating and upsetting, had taught him valuable lessons about resilience, advocacy, and leadership. He realized that true influence comes not from anger or retaliation, but from measured actions, clarity of purpose, and a commitment to principles that extend beyond personal experience. He also recognized the importance of empathy and communication. By engaging constructively with the bank and the public, he had helped foster understanding rather than division. He had shown that addressing injustice effectively requires patience, professionalism, and a focus on solutions rather than conflict. These lessons extended to his own business, personal relationships, and community interactions, reinforcing his belief in the value of integrity and respect in all spheres of life. The CEO's story also highlighted the power of community support. Messages of encouragement, shared experiences, and public attention had amplified the importance of the incident, ensuring that the bank could not ignore the need for accountability. He understood that collective voices, when channeled thoughtfully, could drive institutional change and create a culture of awareness and respect. Over time, the CEO noticed tangible improvements in the branch where the incident had occurred. Employees interacted with customers more attentively and respectfully, and the branch culture became more professional and mindful. The changes were visible not only to the CEO, but also to other customers who shared their positive experiences. This feedback reinforced the idea that accountability, when implemented effectively, could have a meaningful and lasting impact. Reflecting on the journey, the CEO recognized that the incident had become more than a personal story. It had evolved into a catalyst for awareness, reform, and dialogue. His experience had inspired others to address disrespect and advocate for change, showing that even a single incident, when approached thoughtfully, could influence broader societal patterns. He also noted that the incident underscored the importance of leadership in everyday life. Leadership was not only about running a business or achieving personal goals, it was about standing up for principles, inspiring others to act ethically, and fostering environments where fairness, dignity, and respect are valued. His experience at the bank had reinforced this understanding, providing a clear example of how one person's response could ripple outward to create meaningful change. In conversations with friends, colleagues, and community members, the CEO shared insights about handling similar situations. He emphasized the value of documentation, calm communication, and a solution-focused approach. He encouraged people to maintain composure, seek accountability, and